welcome to our session number 5 of season 2, and in which we are going to discuss about the business logics. Particularly, we will talk about workflows, actions, business process flows, as well as we will see how they are going to implement on the system. So let's begin from the housekeeping. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. You can post your question on the chat, even though you can also use QA section. And this uh, presentation is being recorded and it will be posted and published on YouTube as soon as we will complete our today's session. And really appreciate for your time and the cooperation for this session. And we are very hopeful that you are going to enjoy our today's workshop. Okay. For the question answer, you can use normal section, as well as you can post your queries on the chat box. Related to our content, which is already available on OneDrive, as well as the previously recorded sessions, they are available on YouTube. So as discussed about the agenda, we will be talking about applying the business logic. So first of all, we will look into what could be the business logic that we are going to apply on the system. Then we will also have a look on the architecture, means how this normally system operates. Then we will also talk about what are the processes that are available, or you can say some of the process, because there are a lot of other processes are available, but majorly the processes are that they are available, we will be talking about. Then Wahaj, he will give us a deep dive session on the demonstration, that how you can do your work by using the processes. Okay. Then let's begin with our today's session with the introduction about the business logic. So if we summarize the business logic, it's a kind of, you can say, there are custom rules or algorithms that would be required to apply. Means there are some certain logics that you have to apply by the time that you want to use the system, because system has the functionality, because as you know, the Dynamics 365 has the ability or the features which are out of the box available. But in most of the scenarios, we would require some customization and the development. So customization means that you would require to apply some logic, which could contain a set of the code, which could contain a set of the procedures that you need to apply. So what could be the scenario that you would require to create a record? Let's take example, which is mentioned here, that you need to create a new case under the customer service. And based on the customer service case, you would require to send an email notification. So that's the particular procedure that you have to apply. So how you are going to apply based on the business requirement, whatever that you are having a need, you are going to just set up a business procedures to do whatever you need to take the action. In a second scenario, that you have to wait until unless the user completes its action. For example, that you would require some acceptance from the business user. And if nothing happens, then the case should be canceled. So that's a complete, you can say, the custom logic that you would require to build. Similar way, that based on the customer acceptance, that you would require to send a confirmation email or create another task, or let's say any kind of the business logic that you're going to apply. So these types of the business logics, not related to this, means this is where you can say short, you can say scenarios that I have put it there in my presentation, but it could be anything based on your business need. So you require to create a record, you have to retrieve the information, you have to validate any information. Even though you need to build your own custom logic, you would require this pattern there. So that's a complete, you can say, you can say one line statement that you are going to apply the business logic on the Dynamics 365 or Dataverse application. Okay. Now, let's look into the high level architecture, how normally it works there or how it is presentable here. So as you know, the Dynamics 365 has a complete ecosystem, and we are only talking about the customer engagement module. And where if you see it here in a very detailed manner, you will see are two levels here. Although they are not two levels, there are more than two levels, three-tier architecture or nth level of the architecture they are available. If there is, you can say, if we talk about the global implementation. But let's take example of very high level. So you have the front layer. Let me just enable my pointer here so that you can be able to see it. So that's the complete here. Let me just enable here. Yes, that's the first layer that you are going to see where the actual application is running. You have the integrated applications. You have a different clients. They are interacting. Either this is a website or you can say web interface. You have the Outlook interface. You have the mobile and the tablet interface. And these are all applications. They are connected with the back end server, which is you can say dynamic CRM server here. So in the Dynamics CRM server, you are going to find a different layers in which a different kind of the processes are enabled there. So you have the plugins, which are the you can say pre-event, you can say the validation or pre-post event. You have the post-event plugins, which are put in here. Even the custom workflow assemblies that are written there. So these are the all layers are available, and all of the business processes you have put it there in these particular areas. And based on it, either the process it could be synchronous or asynchronous. Synchronous means it is going to be execute on the background. Asynchronous means you are going to get a result on immediate basis. By the time the user is going to do any activity or by the time the system triggers, you will get the result immediately. Synchronous, it is going to be executed on the background. So that's the two level you will find it there on the business processes there. And then you have the entities, you have the data access components and data access platform where you are going to use it. So if you see it here, all of the model that we are going to define, it is going to define under this backend services, or you can say backend environment that we are going to put it there. Okay. And if we see particularly because this particular part that I'm showing you here, it's an on-prem environment. But let's take example that you have it for the online version, online, which is the Dynamics 365, or it's a Dataverse platform that you are going to see, in which you can see it here. Everything comes here as an app here, and that these apps are connected with a platform here, where you have the user interface, which is built. You can say auto, you can say it's a predefined provided by the Microsoft, or you are going to build or develop anything here, which is you can say either you are going to do on the Dynamics 365 apps or the Power Platform here. Then you have the automation rule that you can apply by using the API or SDK. You have the plugins, you have the business rules or workflows, or you have a Power Automate here. So these are the four topics that we are going to discuss it here. But mainly we are going to talk about the workflows, as well as we will talk about the actions, as well as we will talk about in the business rule, because this is what we have already discussed about the business rule in the earlier sessions. So this is what you are going to get it from there. Okay. Now, if we talk about particularly on the API level, how it works. So it's a kind of, you can say, interaction that you are going to put it here. Means for every kind of a transaction that you are going to process, either it's a OData or a normal web service that you are going to use it for the SOAP. So API is going to interact. You have the validation handler where the transaction normally starts, and it will go with the pre-operation. Then the system writing means the system is going to write or update the changes. Then there is a post operation is going to be happen. And it is being handled by the event handler, which is the asynchronous handler there. So this is what the basic concept that you are going to get it there by the time you are going to configure any process on the top of Dynamics or a Dataverse platform. Okay. And if you talk about the process architecture, it looks like in this way, where you have a different components. You have the services which are hosted. You have the DBs as well as the logic that you have applied there on the top here. And these are the all model that it comes here. So business process logics, they have a certain configuration along with the business logic that you have built, as well as if there is any shared platform that you are going to configure there. So these are the all information that you are going to interact with the system there. So that's the basic, you can say, the model that you can see it here on this particular one diagram. Now let's talk about the processes that we have it on top of Dynamics 365 and the DataWorks. So for particularly for the on-prem environment, we have only four type of a business model, or you can say the processes. One is the business process flow. Second one is workflow. Third one is action and the dialogue. Dialogue is going to be deprecated. It's already deprecated, and the Microsoft is suggesting to use either on the business process flow or use the Power Automate to achieve the objectives. But eventually, we have the four types, or you can say three types for the on-prem. And then if we compare it with the online version, you have a Power Automate functionality where you can configure four different types of the flows: cloud flows, instant flow, scheduled flow, desktop flow. So desktop flows, it normally works with the desktop version, means if you want to configure any RPA procedure, or rest of them, they are the cloud, instant, and the schedule, they are the online one. So this is what you are going to get it there. And by the way, what we are going to do in this particular session, we are going to cover two topics. One is the workflow, and the second one is the action. Rest of the other, you can say, topics which is related to the business process flow, or if there is any point that we left, we are going to cover in our next session. And next session we are planning to conduct on this Friday to just cover up whole topic in one single series. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, process flows. First, we are going to see what is actual business process flow. It's just like introduction. Then we will deep dive with Wahaj to give us a more explanation how we are going to work. So in the business process flow, it's a guided process that you are going to configure based on the scenarios that you have. So to perform any business logic, you may have a different stages to complete. So these all stages, they are going to configure on your system here. So it will just give an experience for the user to follow the pattern here. So let's take example. You have the lead process in which first you have to identify either the lead is mature enough to continue with the business. So you are going to see on the qualification, then it will move to the develop. In the develop stage, you are going to start building the proposal. You are going to identify the customer needs and the requirement. You are going to put it there as a opportunity product. Then you are going to put it there in the propose, where you are going to create the quotation, and based on the quotation response, you are going to close it. So that's a complete guided process that you are going to see on the top of it. Again, it's a process level where you are going to define the complete logic, means what action should be taken or what action should be completed by the time user is on a particular stage. So what he has to do, what important information he has to capture, and what background logic should be applied. So this is the first level, you can say, see it here on the business process flow. And this particular part, we are going to explain more in our next Friday session there. Then we talk about the workflow, in which you are going to define a complete logic on the background, means where user is not going to see anything, but as a developer or as a you can say the expert on Dynamics 365 or using DataWorks, you are going to set up a business rule by using the workflows. So first part that you would need to do, you need to see what action that you needed, how it should respond, either it's a real time or a background. What are the steps that you need to follow? Means what are the stages or what are the configuration that you need to put in order to build a workflow? And if there is any condition applied or not, you are going to just start analyzing these questions. And based on it, you normally identify, okay, what type of workflow that you are going to set up. Either it could be the background or it could be the real time. So what is the difference you will see in the background and the real time? Background, normally they are working on the asynchronous model, in which you have the what we call it, it is going to execute on the service, which is asynchronous service of the Microsoft, or you can say on CRM, and it is going to be queued up on the background by the time system start executing it here. By the way, there is a one apology. I just changed the asynchronous to synchronous also in my earlier discussion. So at asynchronous is only for, you can say, the background. Synchronous is the real time. So that's the only correction that I want to make it here. So background work, they work on the asynchronous policies in which all of the workflow, they are going to taken care by the asynchronous service, and they are going to start action on the background by the time that system is going to trigger. So trigger, this is what we are also explaining you, how it is going to be trigger or what are the action that you need to do it. But on the other hand, the real time where the workflow is going to be start on an immediate basis, and where you are going to see the result instantly. But in this particular scenario, web server resources are going to be utilized. So that's a two-way comparison that you need to see. Background workflow, it runs on the asynchronous services, and real time they are going to execute on the web server. But again, all our definition, they are going to store on the CRM there, or Dynamics 365, or Dataverse platform there. And if we see it here on the further analytics, you will see here you have the runtimer in which you have the asynchronous queue manager. It is going to be managed, it is going to be identify, it is going to be see, okay, what's going to execute next here. So there is a difference also comes here, which execute first or which executes in the last. But there are some controls that are not available for the workflows. We have to consider by the time they are going to activate, or what events that it is going to be triggered there. So in this process, what we need to identify, either we are going to write a plugin, we are going to write a workflow, or any package that is going to deploy. It is going to be deployed on the asynchronous server. And in asynchronous servers, it is going to be taken care by on the DB level operation. Okay. Now, there is some important point, and this is what Wahaj, he will also explain by the time he's going to demonstrate. The only consideration that you would require to see it here, who is going to own that particular workflow, in which it is very important that you need to identify who owns it and under which user context the workflow should execute. Either this is user base, business unit base, parent unit, parent child business unit, or organization level. Because based on the ownership means who owns that particular workflow, you have to specify under which context that particular workflow should execute. Because based on the scoping, you normally identify either this particular workflow is applicable for everyone, or this workflow is applicable for the user who owns it and who owns the workflow also, as well as the business unit wise and the parent child business unit wise. So that's the important factor that you need to consider by the time that you are going to define a workflow. But there are some consideration that you have to apply by the time that you are going to see the background or the real-time workflow. First thing is, whenever there is any breakage happen, there is any, you can say, transaction failure happen in the background workflow, it is not going to roll back whatever it is executed. But on the real time, if anything happens wrong in between, any, you can say, error you receive, all transaction it rolls back. So that's the consideration number one that you have to consider by the time that you are going to set up any workflow. Then background workflows, they are normally consume less system resources because they only trigger by the time when it is required. Also, it is queued up in the system, means as soon as the previous workflow, if there is any running and the resources are available, they are going to queue up to start the execution. So it normally handles by the asynchronous service. But on the other hand, if you have the real time, it is going to increase the load on the server, because again, it will take the priority, and the web server, they are going to take the charge to execute that particular real time workflow. Okay. Then you have the workflow context, under which context the user, you can say the workflow should execute. In the normal background workflow, it normally runs under the owner who owns that particular workflow, except if it is not applicable for on demand. On demand means where you are going to execute the workflow explicitly. Okay. And whereas you in the real time that you can also define under which context that particular workflow it should execute, either with the admin, means who is the owner of that particular workflow, or the user who is updating the record under his particular context, the workflow should run there. And the fourth, which is very important point here, whatever changes happen in the background, it doesn't appear on the screen because it may take time by the time the system is completing the process. To see it, you would require to refresh your page. But on the other hand, if you have the real flow, whatever is going to be changed, it is directly update the record or whatever the action that you have described there under the steps, system will respond to you back and it will get updated instantly. And the last one is on the background workflow, you have the option where you can keep the logs, although it is not, you can say, recommended to keep all the logs, but for the time, sometimes you need the logs there to see about the execution of that particular workflows. You can also enable the logs there in which system will not delete the successful transaction. But in this case, you have all of the capabilities where you can see the past session, whatever the execution happen on the background level system. You have all the logs, either which you failed, you have to suspend it, cancel, success, you will get it there. But on the other hand, the real time successful logs, they normally delete it at the time whenever they are executed, delete. Only whenever there is any cancel job is there or there is a failure happen, you will see, you would only able to see that particular information on your system there. Now we have another one which is specifically for the action, in which, because the why action is needed because there are some certain logic that you have to apply. And on the system level you have a certain level of the messages, means you have the update, create, associate, delete, all list of the messages are available. But what if you need to build your own messages, and based on the messages you have to apply the business logic? It comes there where you are going to set up an action in which you are going to define pre-formatted steps, means what the workflow should do, and call that particular action from your code. Either you can use it through the plugin, you have the custom workflow, you can also use it from your business process flow. You can also call it from the client side JavaScripting. So these are the all execution that you can get it from there, and in which you have all the controls here. So now whatever the custom message that you need to apply, you can apply. Because why it is needed? Because there could be some scenarios where you would require to build a scenario, the system should assign, share the information, or any custom logic, which workflow doesn't support, because the workflow supports the standard one as well as the customization that you want to do it. But here you can also apply the same settings similar to workflow, but you can build your own messages here. Now about the replacement of the dialog, which I explained you earlier, because dialogs, they are deprecated, and in which you would only require to replace it with the business process flows and the canvas app. So these are the two business scenarios that you can re-engineer, you can apply for the existing dialogs there. And in the last of my segment, to create a new process, what are the actions that you would require? Either you can use a unified interface or legacy interface. If you are going to use the unified interface, you can use the Power Apps. You can select the environment. You have to open up the solution, and under the solution that you will see all the processes under the automation part. Similarly, if you have the legacy environment, that you would require to navigate to advanced settings, then settings and the processes. So from where you are going to start seeing or start configuring your process here. Now in this part, I have taken too much time of Wahaj. So, Wahaj, if you can just explain us about the topic that we have just discussed about the workflows and the action, then we will continue from that point.
So I think this was, I'm pretty sure everyone will be overwhelmed with the information. This is too much theory. I understand, but this is very essential to understand to start working on the process. So let's do a recap what Adnan said before I continue. And the recap I'll do is with the system, so it is very easy for you to relate all the information that Adnan has shared. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen. As soon as you see, please let me know. Yeah, so you can see my screen. Okay, cool.
Yes, it's visible.
Cool. Second. Okay. So as Adnan said, going to processes, let's just I'll relate everything what he said. I'll just show you in the system. So first thing, you have to go to the advanced settings if you're in the legacy interface. And there is also another way which is modern interface, but don't worry about it. It takes you almost to the same thing. So we land up here in the settings, and in the settings we have a section called process center. Under that we have processes. So once you click on it, you will see the process. Now, what exactly is the process from the system's point of view? Okay. Last time we see there are something we can do using business rules and JavaScript, right? There are ways you can update the data using JavaScript also. You can create records, you can also do set some fields and all, but everything done from in JavaScript is definitely done on the client end, which means on the browser, which is not always the requirement we need to do. And or I would say any data operations should be minimized on the front end. It should be on the server end. That's industry standard. I would say it's already uh, proven to improve the performance and all. So any logic you have to do on the server side, you have to do either using process or plugins. Plugins is something we'll discuss later because that's all custom coding. But there is another way which can be used by super users and developer using GUI user interface. You can design your logics. And first of all, how process is triggered, right? So, or what is an example of the process? Adnan has given you some examples already, but let's say as soon as I create an account record or a contact, I need to send that contact, let's say, introductory email or a welcome email, right? So this can be done using a process. This is one example. Or if I update, uh, let's say, name of the contact, I want to do a particular action, that can be done using the process. Okay. So let's take an example. I'll just get you to one example and explain you on the workflow screen the rest of the things. Okay. So let's do this. We say as soon as an account is created, we'll send it a welcome note. Okay. So how we do it? We go to the processes. Uh, and we click on the new button here, and it will launch the process creation dialog. There's certain settings or configuration we need to do here. First of all, we'll give it I'm just zooming it a bit so you can see it better. I guess it's good, right? Okay, so I'll give it a useful name. uh, this is up to you. You can use any logic. What I used to do is normally write the thing or high level use case that this workflow is going to do or this process is going to do. So I will say contact is the entity name. For my reference, it's easy. Contact, send welcome email. Okay. Now in the category, these are all the categories that Adnan has explained. Action, will come to that in a moment. Then we have dialogue. Dialogue is aggregated. We should not use it. This is there because we still have legacy support, but this can be discontinued. So that's why dialogues are not recommended. A business process flow will cover in the next session, which is more of a UI based guided flow, which is meant for the end user to follow a certain process. And then the one that we'll cover today is workflow. So we'll click on the workflow. So workflow means that there will be a piece of logic that will configure to run on a base on one or more triggers. As simple as that, like we do on the database. We can run, let's say, we can create triggers on the database, which can be triggered on, let's say, create, update, delete, and all right. Similarly, we can run workflows on create, update, delete, and there are some other triggers also available. Okay, then we say on which entity or table we want to run. I say contact. I just choose contact. Yeah. Then this is something called run this workflow in background. Microsoft says it is recommended. The reason being is when the workflow runs in background, that means as soon as you have created, let's say we need to run it on the create. So as soon as the contact is created, it will run in background. That means contact creation, that particular transaction when the contact is created is not directly linked with this particular process or is part of the same transactions. So it means the contact will be created, system will raise this as the event that the contact is created. We need to run a custom or we need to run a process, but the system will look at the available resources, and this can run between any, in a second to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, depending on the availability of the resources. So this will automatically, it will get to a pool or a queue, and there is a asynchronous job on the background running on the servers, which will choose this job and then start running on. So we are not in control of the job that on what time it will execute. So this can run between any time. So anything which is not dependent on the current transaction, we should go for background workflow. For example, sending this email could wait. As soon as the contact is created, this is not a requirement that it should always trigger on the same transaction or the same time. We can wait. I mean, they can receive an email within 5 minutes also, right? So that's fine. On the other hand, let's say if I'm doing a validation, like looking for an existing contact with the same email, or I want to stop the current transaction based on the data being entered or created or updated. So in that case, we can go real time. So first, let's go the recommended way, which is background workflow. Then one more thing you will see here, we recommend using Microsoft Flows instead of background windows. Flow is also something we are going to cover. And now Microsoft says instead of even running the background flow, it's better to run Flow. So now the question is why we are learning background workflows. The reason is you still might be working with the on-premise environments or legacy environments. So this is, I believe, must-have feature that you should know. So we'll cover it. Then we'll start with the new blank process. There is a way we can uh, create templates also, so we don't have to do every time some steps. But again, this is not part of today's session. So let's go with the new blank process. We'll say okay. So what it will do is it will create another dialog, or sorry, another form or workflow editor form where we can now set uh, how this main information is, how and when this workflow will be or process will be executed, and then what kind of actions it will do. So first thing, if you see in the general, we see the name that we provided, it is activated as a process, which is fine. Then we say when to trigger this particular workflow. Let's come to the right side. It's entity, categories, workflow, scope. I'll cover. Adnan has explained you, but I will cover here now. Okay. First of all, start when. This is the trigger. When it should execute. This process should be executed on create or on a update, which is a field change, or status change. The status is different than the field, like active or inactive. Or when the record owner is changed, that means the record is assigned to someone or the record is deleted. These are the only triggers available through workflow. So that's why where plugins will also play a role. There are some events which are not available here that can be only captured using plugins. So anyhow, these will cover a lot of scenarios. So let's look at it. So for now, it's a yeah, record is created. Whenever record is created, this workflow should execute. Okay, scope is if you want to implement any organizational based I would say policies or SOPs, you can select organization. The difference is if now I go back to the system, you see the Wahaj is the owner of this particular record. So if I select the user, it will only execute on the record. Let's say I am creating the record. When I create the record, I am owner of the record. So in that case, it will only execute if I am the owner of the record. If I change this to business unit, that means if any record is created within the business, let's say I am creating the record for Adnan and is part of my BU, so it will be executed on that. But just not to confuse you again, this uh, can take some time to understand this, so it's okay. We mostly run it organization. If we want to run it for everyone, it's that simple. So we take it as organization. Okay. Then on the left hand side, we also have some couple of some more options that we'll take a look. One is, this is the background workflow. So this will remain background workflow. If we want to convert real time, we cannot uncheck it, but we can convert, click this button. We'll see this also. Okay. Then as on demand process, so this one means instead of just running it on a trigger like create or update, we can also call it through programmatically or through a button on the account called, let's say, run workflow. There is a button available. So on that, you can run it on demand. This is useful when, let's say, if you want to run it on some bulk record. Let's say I want to run welcome email, previously created records, which will, let's say, 200 records. I can select them and run this workflow on demand because these were already created, right? So this is useful at that. Then as a child process, if I select this workflow can also be called in another workflow, but this is something we'll come to after this. Okay, workflow job intention. This means this is actually log or monitoring of the workflow. So whenever a account is created, this workflow will be executed. There will be a log created. So this says if the workflow was successful, that means there is no error. It will automatically delete the job in some time. This is to save the dispatch. This is the recommended approach. But if there is an error, it will create, it will sorry keep the sessions or logs which are available in the process sessions. I'll just uncheck it just to show you how it works. Okay, so I don't want to delete for now. Okay, so first step is done. You have said run it on for everyone in the organization. Start when the record is created. The entity is contact. Now, what to do? For that, we need to define the steps. So these are all the steps available in the system. Okay, I'll just discuss few with you. First of all, let's do the condition, which is very basic thing, right? I want to first say, as my logic, I will only send the e- welcome note if the contact has email. So I'll go here. I say contact. Okay, here you can define conditions based on current entity or any related entity. That means only parent entities, many to one, n to one. So for example, if I have parent account, I can choose here as company name, which is account. Okay, for now I'll just choose remain on the current entity. I will say okay. What is the field, on which field I'm checking the condition? I can say email contains data. That's what I want to check. I can check it to specific value, just normal filters. I could say email contains data. I can apply more conditions, choose other fields, so on, and do a group and an or. But yeah, for this example, let's keep it simple. We'll say this, fine, and then we say save and close. So this will create a condition saying, okay, if contact email contains data, then we have to send the email, or else we can do anything else, right? It's a good idea to type description. So if it is a big workflow, it would be easier for you to understand. Only send when email is not null. Let's say I'm just giving an example. Okay, then to add un step under the if condition, I select this particular path. I say okay, add step. I'm going to send email. These are the steps available. We can create a record, we can update a record, maybe current or related record, parent related record. We can assign it, we can send email, we can start a child workflow. We can perform action. We'll come to this. Then we can change status of the record or stop workflow. Okay. Down there, these are all the custom events available. So custom steps available. We'll discuss this later. So for now, our example I say is send email. Okay. We can send email based on a template, or we can set new message. For now, let's set up a new message. I will say send it. Okay, now this is where we can set dynamic data. So let's say I say dear, I want to give it a name to I want to address to the contact's name, so I can get data from contact or again any parent entity. So I say contact, I'll take the first name. So we'll say okay, dear first name, or which is there, whatever is the name. We we welcome you to our subscription plan, let's say. And for now, I'll just finish. Okay. Now I can again use the sender's name, whoever is the sender. So how I can see that, let's say the contact was the one who owns the contact, I can take the owner and put it here. So it will enter the full name of the contact. Sorry, owner of the contact, which is actually user. Okay, then we set who is going to send the email. I can again say the whoever owns the contact will set. So this will dynamically fill this information. To whom to send this email, I will say send it to the contact. So I can directly add it like this. So every entity has a primary email field. So this will take the email address from that and primary email field and send it to that email. I can also CC. Let's say I want to CC the owner of the record. I can also do that. So this will again from system user. This is a user entity. So it will take the email from that. Okay, I can set the say welcome. I can say I want to capture the full name of the contact, so I can do that. Add okay, something like this. Now I can just save and close this dialog. That's all. Okay, one thing you will notice here is the workflow is intelligent enough, the editor is intelligent enough to set the recording of the entry. That means it is automatically relating the email to the current contact. So we can see it in the timeline of the contact. Okay. Okay, for now, let's do this. Or yeah, or when you click on the if part, we can then do conditional branching like as if, but we'll come to that later. This is good enough for our example. I'll say send welcome note. This is again not required, but just to keep it things more manageable. Okay. Now this workflow will not trigger unless you make it activate. So it should be activated. So I click on the activate and then sorry, just let me click again. Yeah, it will just ask for the confirmation. I say okay, fine, go ahead and activate it. So once it is activated, this will become read only, and then we can test it. Okay, now it runs on the create. So I'll go ahead and create. I will say mm, John demo something, and I will give the email for now. I'll say john@example.com and I'll say 7 close. Okay. Now what happens is the workflow will execute in background. So if I come here, you will see it is still waiting for resources. It is not executed. I'll just say now it is in progress and it is in progress because it is failed. That is fine. I'll just open it up and I can see what happened there. If it is completed, it will be in the succeeded mode. The most probably because this is a trial environment and the email is not set. I guess in that case, this is creating the issue. It is not sending the email because we have not configured the uh, Exchange server. I think this completed then. Fine. Let me just double check. I'm just refreshing it to see if it is done. Yeah, it is succeeded. So that means it's configured. Fine. Okay. So here it will in the process session, we can see what happened here. It says this particular instance of the workflow is run against this particular contact or whatever entity it is. when it was started and created and when it is completed on. Then if it was failed, we can do a retry also, so it will show the retry ground, what is the reason the record was created, this is your trigger. And then what steps were executed, so say it is the condition is met and then it went here and created this particular email. I can click on it and I can see the details here. Yeah, so this is the email complete. This is sent from Wahaj because I was the owner. This is two was this particular guy, the contact CC. I CC'd myself. I don't know why, but I did. Then you can see the welcome and the John demo is the trigger. Sorry, dynamic value that we took from the contact full name. This particular thing is the CRM tracker that it is added. We can turn it off if you want to in the settings. Then we said, Dear John, we welcome you to subscription. Well, then I can see my signature or the name here. So this is how simple it is. So we've just done one thing, just an email notification. Now let's do one more thing. Let's say, okay, now if you want to edit it, you have to deactivate. So this is one thing you need to keep in mind. The while it is deactivated, it will not trigger. So if now if I go ahead and create an account, it will not work, right? Okay. Uh, so this means better you do it on the development environment and then move it to the production so the actual thing is not interrupted. Okay, what I will do is I'll add a more step. Let's say we also want to, whenever the account is created, contact is created, want to create a note or task, let's say, for the user to, call the, let's say, our contact. So I will say, okay, create a task. I'll choose this entity. Okay, now based on the entity we choose, we can set the properties, which means it will open up the form for that entity and it will show the fields related to that entity. So that means if I choose here, let's say instead of that, I want to create a note, it will give me a warning that yeah, everything if you've done any configuration that will be override because the entities change. I can now go ahead and check the properties. It will be different as compared to the previous one. Okay, no worries. Sometime it takes time. Yeah, so it will show. Yeah, so you see this one shows the title, attachment, usual thing with the note. Similarly, if I change it to account, it will show me the account field. So for now, let me create a task I said. And I say uh, introduction introduction call. Please call the new contact. Let's say. Okay. Now I want to set is the new contact and let's say we'll give its name. Again, we can take the name from the here like this. We can also insert the link if we want to the contact. There are ways we can get it from here, or let's say well, let's do more interesting thing. Let's say I will set a due date on this particular task. So I say I can select a date, of course, but I want to set it dynamically. How? I say, okay, whenever the contact is created, I take that date and I will say add it to, let's say 3 days. Within 3 days, we should call the introduction. We do an introduction call with the contact. So I will say add, I will say okay, and you see it inserts it dynamically. So now I'll save and close. That's one thing we've done. So now it will send the email, it will create the task. Now let's also add one more condition. Let's say we say if the email is not there, if I want to do any more condition, I can say conditional branch, it will show like as if like this. I can apply any other condition. Yeah, I can do that. Or because this is something for this scenario don't need, I can just set the default action. So that means else. So if the email is there, then do this, or otherwise just in the default action I can let's say just to do something different. Let's say I want to update the record. Which record? I'll update the current record to yeah, let's say I'll just set the description field for an for example. So I would say, let's say in the description I would say no email provided. Okay. It takes time. So similarly, of course, you can set various steps here to create or update records. Let me say I want to set the, where is the description? Good question. Personal, okay, I can set the personal notes also, but let me find the description. The form, this is the one thing that you need to learn to how to find the fields because it shows like this. Uh, the details, okay, I don't see it. I don't know why. Let me see. Maybe it will only show the fields which are on the at least on one form, so it's not there. That's fine. I'll for now I'll just use on the personal notes. I will say no email provided. This is something I'm setting like hard coded. I'll just save and close. Please excuse my spellings. Okay, I'll just save and activate it now. Yeah. Okay. So now I'll just go ahead and create two accounts just to show two different examples. This one, a guy with email, right? I'll give it some email abc@example.com and just save it close. This is the one contact. The other one I'll just create as uh, the guy with no email. So this guy do not have email, so just go ahead and save and close. Okay, now if I go back to my workflow and I see the process session, there should be two. One is in progress, the one is in succeed. If I refresh, I think that's also succeed. Okay, first go with the email one. So you we can see there it's come to this condition. This is true. Then it went to the sending welcome note and it also created the task. This is the task it's created. Then on the other hand, we can see we have sorry, let me open, yeah, the job. The if part was not true, so it comes to the else part, and then uh, the guy with no email, right? It updated the contact with this information. Okay, fine. So now if I go back to the contact, I would able to see that in this one we have a subject and we also have a introduction call. If I go there in the introduction call task, you can see the due date is I don't know, something happened. I think I set it before. Sorry, my bad. Instead of adding, I just subtracted. So you get the concept, right? You can add the days or years, so it will automatically set. So similarly, you can set any dynamic data. On the other hand, the contact that we saw, sorry, the guy with no email will should have a note if the field is there. I think it's in the details, right? The personal notes. Yes, no email provided, right? Oh, my spellings. So yeah, okay. This is one example. Now I'll quickly, I know we are out of time, so I'll just quickly take you to a real-time workflow example. Uh, so what we can do is we'll take another example called, let's say again on the contact entity, we say uh, let's say do not create if email is null. So I'll apply kind of a validation where say I will not allow to create a contact when an email is null. So this is something I cannot check in background. This is something I need real time in the same transaction. So I'll just go ahead and choose the thing called workflow. I'll again choose my target entity, which is contact in this case. Sorry, let's quickly search this thing here. Yeah. Okay, now I will uncheck this thing. I say no, run it in the real time. Why Microsoft do not recommend? Because it's real time process and any real time process can hold the system process and it consumes more resources. Okay, while it will create this form, I'll want to show you something which is event framework. Okay, this is part of the plugins that I would cover, but just to give you an idea, Anytime you create a record or do any operation in the system, this could be create, this could be update, this could be assigning a record, or any operation you perform in the Dynamics 365 or Dataverse model driven app, these are the main execution pipeline which is done. So let's say if I create a contact as an example, as soon as I hit the create button, there's a pre-validation stage. So this is the stage when system starts looking for the lockdown user security roles and all of these things, right? So just remember this is a stage. After that, there is a pre-operation. That means there is an operation done before the actual system operation, or then it comes the main operation, which is also known as system operation, then the post operation. In our example, when we create the contact, we can trigger our logic either on the pre-operation, which is before the contact is created. We can also do it after the contact is created. So this can vary based on your requirement. Let's see, if you do not want to even the save record, it's best to do it on the pre-operation. Or if you want to do something in the real time but after the contact is created, let's say if in the you want the id, you want to create a generated record and set their id, so in that case we need the post operation. Main operation is something we cannot do anything, so any of our workflow or plugin or any custom code will only run between either on the pre-operation, post-operation, or pre-validation stage. So now why I wanted to show you this, because when I come to the real-time workflow, we'll see it in a more kind of this thing. So you see, if I compare my other workflow with you, just to do a small comparison, I'll just choose this. You see the real time and background, there are a few changes here. One is, you see, it has this after and before option, which we do not have in the workflow. Sorry, background. So background will always runs after the operation is done. Then you will also see some changes to the logs. You will see we can only keep logs here when there is an error, otherwise we won't able to retain any logs. On the other hand, we can retain here. Rest of the options more or less are similar. So I'll just now minimize it and we'll just focus on this real time log. Okay. So this one again will be unchecked. If you want to convert it to background, we can just hit this button and it will convert it to background. Then on demand and child process, same thing. Yeah, we would like to keep logs. This is recommended because if there is an error you want to diagnose, you need to have the process session logs, right? Okay, then we see option for automatic process. Okay, what's the process? Again, I'll want to run it for all everyone in the organization. So I choose this. This is fine. I want to record, create this on the record. Let's say if I want to run it on the field change, you will see I can select before and after. This is that, you know, pre and post thing I was telling you. So we will see this example also. But now for now, let's quickly say, okay, record is created. So whenever the record is created, I'll just say, okay, add a condition. 1 second. Yeah. So I say, please add a condition. I have to say if email contact email does not contains data, that means it's null. And so I want to do one thing. I want to throw an error. So to throwing an error in the workflow is very easy. You just say stop workflow. If you keep it succeeded, that means it will just stop the workflow. So this is used kind of a return, right? If you want to, let's say, check something, if that is true, or do you not want to run any of the subsequent steps after this, you can stop the workflow succeeded. But if you want to throw error, you can say cancel it, cancel the current workflow. Second, it's taking time, and then you can set a error message here to give information to the user. Email is required. That should be good. Okay, we activate this one and let's see what happens. So because it's part of the same execution pipeline when the contact is creating or the same transaction, we can stop this. So once we stop it, everything will be rolled back, you know. So that means the contact will not be created at all. So that's the use of real time. That's why we use real time. Not only for validations, this could be there other logics also. I mean, depending on your scenario or use case. Okay, it's taking time. That happens. Okay. Bye. So okay. Okay, in this view also you can see we have the status activated and draft. So we can filter here based on activated and draft processes. Draft will definitely will not execute, only activated will be executed. Let me cancel and activate it again. Maybe it's stuck. Let me do a refresh. That's better. Okay, activate. This time let's wait. Other than that, on the process center, you will find that we can filter based on the type of the processes, which is business process flows, workflows, dialogues, and templates are there. Then we also have in the process center something called Microsoft Flows, but that will cover later. Okay, did it activate? I don't know. The system trial instance maybe some issue. Let's give it one more minute. Meanwhile, I can show you something else. Yeah, how to run this on update. Okay, so this is interesting. Okay, if you want to run it on a field change update, that is the field change. We select this and then you have to tell the workflow on which field, on update of which field, when the value changes of a specific field, then we can execute it. We can say, uh, we can do, you know, select all, but that's not recommended. It's not good. We should only choose on the fields where it really matters. For example, if I update the email, in that case I want to send this welcome note again, just an example. Or I can choose any more field also if I want to. Or let's say the owner is changed, I want to send it from that, so I can choose the owner field here. Yeah, owner. So this will execute now on both of these field changes. Delete is also there. If you want to run something on the delete, you can do that. Status change, let's say if the contact by default we have active and inactive status, right? If I open this status reason will be here. Okay, not added to the form, that's fine. But there is a status reason. Every record in the CRM has a status reason. So if you change that status, it will execute. Let me go to the account. Okay, let's see if that one is execute and is still not activated. Something with the issue, not with our thing, with this maybe the trial instance. Let me see everything is okay here. Yeah, because otherwise it will give error. Oops, I think there is an issue. We did not select the, my bad. Okay, we need to do
Yeah,
when the record is
either it should
created.
be on demand or there are some
Yeah,
specific.
but usually it gives that error. I don't know. Sometimes it happens. That's fine. Okay, now let me quickly go ahead and activate this. And My bad, guys. I wasted some time there. I will also activate this one just to show you the example. You see, if I choose the owner, it also selects the assigned trigger also, because the ownership change means the record is assigned to someone else. So let us test the both scenarios. So first, I'll create a contact without email. Okay, I say Adnan, right? Just like that. Seven close, and it should say hello, email is required. So we see this come from the business process error. I can download the log file if I want to see the more details in it, like what was the actual process. You see, this is the sync workflow. Sync means real-time workflow, which was terminated with this error. So this is one example of the real time. Now if I give the okay, let me take the other example. Okay, this guy, the one who didn't have email last time, let's give it him email. I say now now I have email at example.com. So this time the workflow should trigger because I have set it to run on update also. So I can run the same workflow on multiple events, that's for sure. So now if we go to the process sessions, you will see it is waiting for resources, and it should work. Why it's not working? Maybe it's taking some time again. Yeah, it's done. It's succeeded actually now. So it also sent to the introductory email. So yeah, I guess you get the idea here. One thing I would like to mention, which is very much needed, actually, I'll go to the other one and deactivate this guy. So whenever you are editing, you might come to a scenario where you want to, let's say, add a particular task here. First of all, you cannot move this. There is no way you can do that. So you have to delete and recreate. That's one of the issues here. But um, let's say if I want to add an action before sending the email, to if I add a step, let's say I want to update a record or I want to create a note, let's say I want to create the record. So if I do, you will see by default it will be added after the step I have selected. So what I can do is there is another way. If I want to do it before, so what I will do is I'll click here and there is an option insert. I can say before step. If you check this and come here, and now if I enter anything here, it will add before. So I can again change it if I want to. So yeah, you get the idea, right? This is how it is. Then we have some more things here. I would say we have assign, send email, but you can test it yourself also. Yeah. So I've already spilled over, I guess, in terms of time. So Adnan, I would suggest we take the actions to another session because I won't able to cover it and I don't want to do it in a hurry because that's a very important thing that was added after the workflows. So yeah, I would like to cover it in another session. So what do you suggest there?
So what we can do, if you can plan the action, right? Though the only thing is remaining for the actions.
Yeah,
So what we can do it on Friday, or shall we
I'll
propose?
just confirm you. We'll send them by email.
Mm,
Yeah.
no problem, no problem. Because I
So
already
yeah.
scheduled for this Friday for the business
Yeah, so
process
we
flow.
can do on the Tuesday. That's not an issue. I'll do more scenarios with the workflow plus action. So this is very much required because I know this is too much information.
Mhm.
So we can do this
No
in
problem,
another session. So we'll do
no
a
problem.
session two. We'll do some more scenarios with the workflow.
Hmm.
Some more examples. While we'll play with the related records also. Because you didn't see any example with the related dot
Hmm.
roles and weight conditions, and then we'll also do actions in that one and child
No problem at
workflows.
all. No
Yeah.
problem. No problem.
So I guess yeah, we you can take over, Adnan. Maybe you can share your screen and just we can quickly end this session because we are already
Yeah,
over
exactly.
our time.
We have already, you can say,
12 minutes
bypassed
over.
the time here. So there are some, you can say, consideration that I would like to showcase. It's just like I think 5 minutes more it will take, and then we will conclude our today's session. First of all, it's related to the consideration that we have to think about it by the time that we are working. So here it is the first one, which we have it that we have the limited triggering event on the workflow. Means either the workflow they are going to be, you can say, triggered by the time that either the record is going to be create, update, delete, assign, or state change. Okay, but you have a custom message based action, but you can achieve it. So let's take example that you should trigger a event whenever there is particular event happen. Let's take example any association of the entity, or let's say there is a sharing happen, then you can also specify in the action. But on the workflow, you have the limited triggering point. And then the second one is related to in the out of the box scenario, you wouldn't be able to perform the share, unshare, and the delete operation. Means if you want to activate anything on the based on this triggering, then you are not having a provision to use the pre-operation because the workflow only operates on the post operation. That's a very, you can say, important point. If by the time that you are going to configure a workflow, and if you need to operate with the pre-operation validation or action, so it's recommended to go with the particularly for the plugin. Then there is no way to set the execution order on the workflow. So that's a very important thing because in the plugin that you have the provision that you can also set the priorities, but on the workflow, you wouldn't be able to do it because it will run on the same way by the time it is going to be activated. Then the workflow doesn't trigger on the Dynamics 365 offline mode. And also there is a very particular part which is needed to be highlighted that the workflow in the out of the box the workflow, you are not able to retrieve the child record and do the operation. To do so, you would require to write your own custom assembly or a plugin and use it in the workflow. And again, the same thing with the pre-operation and the post-operation, you don't have the capabilities of pre-image and the post-image to validate any changes. To do so, you would require to do in the plugin. And the most important part is the execution on the current, you can say, user context. So background workflow doesn't support because it will be executed based on the owner of that particular workflow. And the main thing which is related to here is that you can't have the more than four nested if condition. If you are going to do so, system will not allow you to add a step in between. So it is always be recommended if you wanted to use the nested, so you plan the conditions before you are going to apply the changes there. And then you have some limitations, number of the workflows, particularly for the professional version of Dynamics. You can't have the more than 200 workflows, but on the on-prem, on the enterprise level, that you have the option that you can go with the unlimited. Then there is another one, which is the loop function. It is not available in the function, so you would require to use the Power Automate or some other mechanism, but in the workflow, it is not applicable. And parallel branching is not supported because if you want to execute on parallel on the same workflow, it is not supported. And particularly for the timeout, because on the on-prem version, if you have the background, so you can have the unlimited timeline, even though you can also set the timeout. But for the online or Dataverse environment, you have only 2 minutes timeout on that. And then for the background workflow, what is recommended by the Microsoft, or even though the limitation that you are going to face on the workflow level, it is always be recommended to go with the Power Automate flows to overcome all the limitation that you are going to face it. Okay, so take home of today's what we have done today. Although we are left with the two you can say discussion, which is related to the action and the process, business process flow. We will do it, business process flow. We will plan it for the next week. But for the action, as Wahaj he recommended, we will plan it for the next Tuesday. Okay. And these are the all learning resources that you can have a look on to it. And I think we are good to go. Really appreciate everyone for joining this call and hope to see you on Friday. and we will continue from that day. Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone.